Development
We're
Services.
gonna wait for you again? You guys are good, right? Trustee Calandrello. Trustee Healy.
Here.
Trustee Malani.
Here.
Development Services, approval of minutes.
A motion to approve the minutes. Mr. Chairman. Mr. Malani. Move to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of the Development Services Planning and Engineering Committee of October 21st, 2019.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Historic District Grant Program.
Ed?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This item before you tonight is a discussion-only item in regards to a proposed grant program that would specifically apply to historic district properties. In the past, the village has similar programs that were either applicable to properties within the historic district, expanded to commercial properties along 143rd Street, and also in 2012, this program was known as the Appearance Improvement Grant, and it was extended to all commercial properties within the village. Typically, these grants would fund facade improvements or any improvements that were visible from public view, and they would fund, the petitioner would have to invest a minimum of $1,000, and they would fund up to 50% up to and including anywhere from $10,000 to $50,000 for the private investment. This is a grant. It didn't have to be paid back. One item that I would like to point out as well is currently there is not money budgeted for this program itself, but we're bringing the item forward to the committee and to the village board for guidance to determine if it would be funded in the future to help not only assist in funding for improvements to the facades of buildings for commercial purposes, but as well to assist our landmark and historic properties maintain specific design. There have been requests since the Appearance Improvement Grant was discontinued that would have been allowed to see funding, and one of the reasons that what the staff is considering it is because some of the requirements for historic properties are more stringent than they would be if they were located elsewhere in the village. I'd be glad to answer any questions, but that concludes my report.
Ed, could you tell us what the Economic Development Advisory Board, did they discuss this?
This was discussed at a meeting of the Economic Development Advisory Board. It wasn't formally voted on, but they were generally in favor of supporting a grant program that would assist historic district properties.
Any questions?
Yeah, I've got a couple questions. Why was the program defunded in 2018?
I think we went through a series. I couldn't specifically point to one reason, but there were looking for savings in the budget, and there was information that it wasn't as widely utilized and there was money available.
Sure. And how many businesses do we have in the old Orland district right now?
I don't know that off the top of my head that would be applicable, but it would be applicable not only to the businesses, but also to the 16 landmark and contributing structures that we have.
There's 60?
16.
16,
Yeah.
okay. And this similar question, I guess, then you probably wouldn't know exactly how many vacancies we have in that area either then, which is fine.
I can follow up with that information.
Yeah, I'm just curious because, I really think, keeping hold of that historic area, it's a good thing. I just want to make sure that we kind of focuses on the businesses that need it the most, preferably ones that are, doing well, but, may need some help. So.
Okay.
Trustee Healy?
Okay. I'm sorry, Dan, you want to
Sure.
speak?
I definitely would support this program, and we could even do a budget amendment, as Emery's looking at me, if we found a good cause in the next cycle, if we can find a pocket to fund this with. And I have personal experience. I have a couple clients who used to have there, and I was just there recently looking at a building. There's not that many businesses other than a couple. It's a dentist and Don Jeans's place and a chicken place, and then a bar. That's pretty much it, and then a hookah lounge. So I think helping our businesses there, and I would even go a further step, and maybe even do infrastructure, village infrastructure to improve that area, because I feel like that's the next phase of a redevelopment of we're going to have the triangle, and then Old Orland, the residential sides happen, and I think the commercial will come after that too. So yes and yes.
And I think it takes a lot of courage by people to buy and invest in that area to, and a certain, there's a certain spirit that they have to bring to building and developing and restoring that history, a certain respect for the history. And I like the idea. So I'm all for favor for bringing this forward. So that's the end of our discussion, I think.
Good. (143rd Street widening).
Trustee Hill? So we're bringing two requests for 143rd widening project. I just want to quickly take a quick few minutes to update you on the history of the project and some of the reasons why we are bringing this request to you. In 2000, and before I start, I have two representatives from CBEL, Mr. Mike Makovic and Matt Huffman. They both are, Matt is our project manager and Mike is principal in charge for this project, senior project manager. And as a follow-up, if we have questions, they certainly can help me to answer those questions. In 2014, the village retained Christopher B. Burke, also known as CB Bell, for $859,000 to complete phase one and phase one engineering services for the for 143rd Street widening project from Wilcook to Southwest Highway. And then later on in 2017, we added another amendment to their contract for $249,000. In 2017, since 2017, the IDOT has come up with several new requirements that was not determined in the original scope of services. And some of them, if I could point out those to you, include in 2018, CMAP came up with 2050 traffic volumes, whereas the project was originally designed for 2040 traffic volumes. That's a change that has occurred. Crash analysis from originally that was completed for 2012 to 2016. Now they want us to do 2013 to 2017. Also in 2019, Illinois State Water Survey came out with what's called Bulletin 70, which shows the rainfall data. So rainfall data in the last 10 years has moved up from 7.5 inches to 8.5 inches. That's an almost 14% increase in the rainfall data. So the project was originally, again, designed for the previous rainfall data. Now it has to be updated for the new rainfall data. In the old Orland, we had to review the design of the 143rd and Southwest Highway intersection because of various changes at the intersection, Metro parking lot interconnect, as well as 143rd Street and Wolf Road intersection impact on Yunker Schoolhouse that is located. It's a historic property that has to be addressed in the design. These are all requests that came from IDOT. Additional studies has to be done because, as I was mentioning, at the 143rd and Southwest Highway, because IDOT changed the requirement for the design vehicle from WB55 to WB65, which is a multi-unit truck. Additional traffic studies has to be done for the signal to incorporate or interconnect the railroad train timing with the traffic timing. Those has to be coordinated with together for it to function properly. Mm-hmm. There were additionally 13 properties that were identified in the old historic district that were not included in the previous project. IDOT requires additional environmental studies have to be done, as well as the State Historic Preservation Committee requires those studies to be done. There are a few other reasons here. Another reason that is a strong reason for that is when the project was originally identified, we had 3 retaining walls that were identified in the project based on the concept that was prepared. But when the project went into detail, 11 retaining walls had to be designed. And these are all retaining walls that are at least 7 feet above, 7 feet or higher, exposed above the ground. And they require extensive geotechnical work as well as geotechnical and structural engineering design. To save village cost, what we have done is some of these projects, some of these elements, we have tried to move from phase 1 to phase 2 of this project. And it is our expectation or our effort that we get IDOT funding for phase 2. And if we get the IDOT funding, then the cost for phase 2 will be split 70-30 between the village and the IDOT. So it will be 30% our cost, 70% of their cost. So example would be that on $1 million expense, we will be paying $300,000 versus $1 million now, if that's what we have to do. Those are our high-level variations that we have from the project. And based on that, I'm requesting two changes or two requests to the village, to the committee. Number 2 is the supplement number 2. So at present, CBEL has about $175,000 left in the account for this project. But most of that money is tied or allocated to their sub-consultants. Those services are, at this point in time, are not needed for the project. We are able to push those into phase 2. But what CBEL is requesting that most of that money be allocated back to them and one of their sub-consultant, Huff and Huff Associates, so that they can use that fund and be able to continue to work on the project. But that aspect of the project requires that we accept this request and then we make a request to IDOT to make that change, because it's a federally funded project and it's a requirement by by feds that approval has to go through IDOT. But that change is a $0 change. It does not change the contract value of the project. It just reallocates the funds from one firm to another firm. In this case, it would be mostly CBEL and their subconsultant, Huff and Huff Associates. So that request requires that about $170,000 be reallocated to them and $3,550 be left for Huff and Huff Associates in that account as it exists now. So that's our first request. The second request is to address the items that IDOT has previously required, is a request for $363,394 in additional funding for this project for CBEL contract. Again, majority of that fund will go to one of their subconsultants, Wang Engineering, $223,958. That will be for their geotechnical work for those additional 7 walls that I mentioned in my previous comments. And then the remaining $139,436 will be allocated to CBEL to continue to work and complete phase 1. This total effort will give us an IDOT approved phase 1 report that we can carry on to start phase 2 at a later date, whether we get IDOT funding or we proceed with our own funds, whichever the case may be at a later time. But those are the two requests, and that's a quick summary of what I have requested. So the financial impact of this one is the supplement number 2 will not have any financial impact because it's a reallocation of funds. And for supplement number 3, we have requested in the draft 2020 capital improvement budget sufficient funds to cover the cost for supplement number 3. So quick summary, if you have any questions, myself or CBEL's team can try to answer that.
Any questions?
Just to make sure I understand, then, the only additional funds is supplement number 3, and then there is room in the capital improvement plan
Correct.
in 2020 for this?
Correct.
Mr. Chairman? And
Calgary?
this is, we also, in phase 2, will get 70% back, so if IDOT picks it up. So this is kind of investing in our future, correct? Do we get some of this money back? Go ahead.
So in phase 2, if IDOT picks up this project, we will get 70% for the phase 2 expenses, not phase 1 expenses.
And that was just, I think historically, we always try to pre-fund these things, because if we don't get engineering done, we won't get the funds. So
That is true.
I think it's good practice we do.
That is correct.
My question is, I just have a general question, which is, when is this 143rd Street project going to be completed? In my lifetime, or while I'm driving, or?
143rd Street project needs about $74 million, and we can get it done. So
Look at it, 10 years or 20 years?
We're hoping that it's shorter than that. I mean, we are pursuing different funding sources, some through IDOT, some through feds, and we'll continue to look for funds. And then as soon as we get the fund, I mean, a portion of the project from Will Cook to Wolf Road is ready to be built. The design on that project or that section is 100% done, and we're just waiting for the money to be allocated to the project. If we have the money today, I would say the project can start construction in about 6 months.
Okay, well, you've got, Seabell has a great reputation, I think, from what I've heard, for engineering in these public projects, and we also have, I think, good engineering on our staff to oversee them. So I'm all for.
One good news, if I could add that, just last Friday, we learned that CMAP, which is the local Metropolitan Council, it has awarded us $542,000 for signal interconnection at 143rd and Southwest Highway. So that fund will be available to us to use in 2021. Right now, we do not have the IDOT funding, but that's a piece of the fund that is just recently made available to us.
Well, that's great. And the sooner we can move this action down the road, the better for everybody, I think. So can I take a motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Calandrella?
I would recommend to the village board approve the proposal from Christopher B. Burke Engineering Limited of Rosemont, Illinois for the 143rd Street widening, Phase 1 engineering services for supplemental number 2, $0 amendment to the existing federal services agreement through IDOC. And I move to recommend to the village board to approve the proposal from Christopher B. Burke Engineering Limited, Rosemont, Illinois, for the 143rd Street widening for additional $363,394 in professional fees to complete Phase 1 engineering services supplemental 3.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Believe that's it.
Finance Committee, approval of minutes?
Wait until the budget one, but it's just the big. Looking for a motion?
Mr. Chairman.
Trustee Malani?
I move to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of the Finance Committee of October 21st, 2019.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Implementation of an amusement tax.
I'll start off and then I'll give it to Emery to talk about. So this discussion kind of came up with conversations after we kind of finished the budget cycle to figure out, and Trustee Healy and I talked about possibly needing a little more capital funding for this year and future years. So we got together with Anne-Marie to figure out if there's a possible venue to get that would possibly increase our revenue to get more capital projects in the Parks Department. As we all know, I think if anyone pays attention to myself, I'm a big proponent of neighborhood parks and our park system. We have 65 now neighborhood parks, and they're all aging. And now we did have investment in the proposed budget for more parks or fixing our parks. However, a lot of it, as it's talked about in the legislation text, talks about how it's mostly going to be safety improvements. So when people see the park tear it up, it's going to be for a safer edge or a safer pathway, not a new jungle gym or something like that. Trustee Healy and I said, let's talk about it and see what the committee wants to do, and we could, instead of just bringing in a quick amendment on the second, let's have a discussion. And Marie, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I mean, we've talked about additional home rule taxes that we're able to enact for a number of years. The board has chosen not to implement any of them over the years. Trustee Calandrello asked that we place this on the committee. There is an attachment that shows some of the surrounding municipalities and what they collect through an amusement or entertainment tax. And then we also just estimated, based upon the entities that we think the board may choose to apply it to, we estimated we could probably collect about $600,000 a year. That's probably the max. That's probably a pretty kind of robust estimate, but just based upon our uses.
Excuse me, that includes no new development or anything?
That just based upon what we have today.
Okay. Mr. Chairman?
Trustee Healy?
I have lots of questions.
Okay. I'm going to go first?
You spoke first, so go ahead.
yes,
Mr.
go
Healy. You'll be next.
Can you correct me if I'm wrong? Over half the tax comes from out-of-town customers.
I couldn't tell you that. I don't know who visits our local establishments where we would assess an amusement tax.
Well, I would presume a significant amount of this user fee comes from out of Orland customers. Dan has already spoken to the parks being behind, but I mean, and the roads and that. But we have a $2 million increase because in the budget costs due to the minimum wage increase. And this $2 million has to come from new revenue or cut costs. And there's really not, to me, there's not a whole lot of cost to cut, but, so we've got to come up with some new revenues associated with this. Or if we don't do this, we're going to have to make some, shut the pool down at noon, on Sunday. We don't want to do that or anything like that. So to keep things as they are, we're going to need some more revenue. We've said that Tinley Park has this tax, and I think one of the biggest things is to use this as a tax incentive for a performance incentive to entice people to come in here. We could, because there's some of these entertainment venues, golf courses, driving ranges, and all that they could just as easily go to Tinley, Mokina, Homer Glen. And we should have some, who are probably going to offer them incentives. And it'd be nice if we had a pot to reach in for some incentives rather than our slim pockets. This will not be an increase in real estate taxes. If anything, it's a stopgap against future real estate tax. And in government, like private business, we could increase the revenue, but I'd hope the community would recognize that the budget is pretty tight, and we've cut costs, but we'd be good stewards of this additional money by increasing the timetable for the repairs and so on. And I also think that the fact of the matter is that we get very little money from the state of Illinois compared to what we used to. Orland Hills got $9 million in capital funds from the state of Illinois, and Orland Park got none. You could say, well, in the past we got money for LaGrange Road and 159th, but Homer Glen and Orland Hills and Tinley all benefit from that. It's not just us. I wish we could put up more of a fight down there to grab some money, but we can't. But the overarching economic and politics is that we're governed by socialist Democrats in this state, and they punish successful communities like Orland Park to take care of poorer suburbs after they take care of their cronies. Until the suburbs to the east, as well as Chicago, continue to decline into socialism, you can expect less and less from Springfield. We have to depend on ourselves to raise this money. We're filled with self-reliant people here, and I don't think that this entertainment tax or user fee tax, if you don't use it, it's not going to hurt you at all. I think now is a good time to do it while the economy is good, and I think it's a good time, and I'd like to look back after we finish and say, after many years, and say we helped stave off increases in real estate tax by passing this user fee arrangement.
Thank you. Trustee Maloney, questions, comments?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure I 100% agree with this proposal, actually, considering I ran out of platform to keep taxes low. It seems kind of contradictory if I decide to start implementing new taxes. And we possibly want to put I know I saw an estimate of a 5% tax on entertainment.
That's what would put out there as a number, yes.
Yeah, okay. So I know it doesn't sound like much, but an average trip to the movies for a family of four is probably about $100, right? So we're looking at taxing them about $5 more for going. And if you look at most of our entertainment facilities, and I'm not sure what we would classify as an entertainment facility, whether it would be just movie theaters, places like Dave & Buster's, Gizmos, so on and so forth, where the majority of the people that probably go there are younger. So when you look at their economic base versus us sitting up here, it's a much different hit to their pocketbook. So, where do you draw the line here too? Do we, include restaurants as entertainment? Do we, if a local establishment has a band playing, do we count that as entertainment? What are we going to classify as entertainment? And I looked at the comparables, but what I did notice is I didn't see any of our surrounding suburbs like New Lenox, Frankfort, Mokina, Lamont, or et cetera. Do they participate in any kind of taxing of amusement? Any of them, besides Tinley Park?
Amy, did you look into that when I asked?
When we did the survey, we just kind of searched online through their CAFRs, and these are the municipalities that we found that have this type of tax.
Okay. So I'd assume then if we had neighbors close by that we would have been able to find that out, right? So we found Tinley Park, who has an amphitheater that holds how many people? Anybody?
A lot.
A lot, okay, yes. So I also look at things like Bolingbrook. Well, not the same size as Orland Park, but close. They've got a very active amusement complex at the promenade, and they're only achieving $175,000 in tax revenue. So if our neighboring suburbs aren't taxing for this, I'd like to see an estimate of the revenue that we're going to lose. Because if I was somebody and I didn't have a ton of money to go spend on entertainment, and I could drive 5 minutes farther to save $5, I'm heading over to Frankfort. I'm heading to Lamont. Somewhere else I can go out and save my money instead of paying this tax. And, kind of follow up on what Trustee Healy said, should we really tax our residents more just because we don't feel that we're getting our fair shake from the state? I don't think that's quite possibly the best way to go after it. So those are my thoughts.
So a couple of thoughts is that this is a user tax that, while Amory can't say define how many are residents versus non-residents, I think what we all agreed upon, it's better to maybe use this revenue than to raise residential property taxes. As we always heard, and I keep on repeating, 7 cents per dollar of property tax goes to the Village of Orland Park. More importantly, the average home in Orland Park pays less than $500 to the village for parks, recreational programs, police, public works, and all that the village provides. So based on that, this was an idea that we came up in order to grab revenue from, I'm going to argue, is majority of out-of-town guests. More importantly, it improves our parks instead of increasing property taxes. More importantly, if you compare all of our neighboring towns, Tinley Park, Frankfort, Mokina, New Lenox, Lockport, all of our competitors for families, they all have separate taxing bodies for parks and recreation. 6.5, I believe it was, is what Tinley Park gets from the residents in property taxes. So just to live there, you have to pay that to improve their parks. Lockport improves their parks in they do almost 5 parks a year. So all those things, and those all pay on the backs of the property tax owners, of the residents, not visitors in town. So that's where at least my mindset was on this user fee, as Trustee Healy put. So I'm for it. I would recommend, I don't know if we need a consensus to put it on the agenda to make it an official amendment, but to put a 5% amusement tax. The amusement tax also is defined, so it would be golf course, it would be golf, entertainment as in like Dave and Buster's, and theaters. It's not like all of a sudden every bar is going to get taxed. This is not a alcohol and tobacco tax. This is, I think, the best way to improve our parks. That's going to not raise our property taxes. And that's what this goal was for. So I guess if we're taking a consensus, if anyone have comments before we figure out the consensus, I'd be more than happy to, if anyone have any comments before I ask for a consensus? Trustee Milan?
Yeah, I have a question, or more of a comment. I really don't think our plan to improve the parks was a bad idea. I think what we did is a heck of a start compared to where we were. We're going to be fixing security issues or safety issues because they are one of the bigger priorities before we fix new equipment or fix or add new equipment, but I think we're also going to fix broken equipment in there. We're going to do maintenance things that are necessary to bring these parks up to speed. Yeah, we're not going to create a whole bunch of brand new parks, but we're doing a lot more than we were. And if we continue that cycle over a longer term, our parks are going to be in the shape that they need to be in. They may not get there as quick as you'd like them to be, but it's going to get there. We have to start somewhere. And turning around and taxing everybody just to beautify a few parks may not be the best way to do it. Maybe we let the process we put in place play out and see how it goes.
Trustee Calangelo, the thing is, we're not taxing everybody. We're taxing people. It's a user fee, and if you want to, and as we have an older community, and speaking as a representative of the older community, I'll say that they don't go out entertaining as much as they used to as far as certain venues. I still think I believe it's mainly on out-of-town people, and why not take that in lieu of raising real estate taxes down the road for our residents? So that's my comment.
Yeah.
Any other further comments before we figure out if there's a consensus?
I mean, if this is going to be moving forward, I know we're going to vote on this tonight to be able to take it to board. I think if this comes, any further, I think that we need, more accurate numbers. Let's find out more about what's going on around our neighboring communities, not what's going on in the north suburbs. Let's, find out what the impact would be if we do lose customers to our neighboring areas, and, actually have some solid numbers in place. I know tonight this is more of just a discussion, but I think I'd like to see a much better plan in place.
I could agree with waiting a little bit to get some more information. That seems reasonable.
And I think the best way would be is we could propose something for the second, because we're running out of time, and then we have that information, and then at that time we can make an informed decision. I think that's probably the best way to do it. So I would propose that we at least push a consensus that, if there's a consensus, of course, that there's a 5% amusement tax be added on to the next budget cycle, and those funds would be stored in a fund, lockbox, whatever the legal term, finance term would be for parks capital improvements. The Department of Parks, so it could be a little more flexible. Go ahead.
And this is going to be called the Milani usage fee? Is that?
I don't think Ms. Milani wants his name on this one, so.
Okay.
Nope.
Okay.
So I guess, so what I just proposed, 5% earmarked, whatever we want to call it, lockbox for capital, parks capital, which could be neighborhood or other parks. That's my consensus. I say yes for that. Trustee Healy, are you in favor for that possible amendment?
Yes, I'm in for it.
And
No.
so it looks like there's a consensus that we add that agenda to an amendment on the second with a lot more additional information.
The second what, Dan?
The second, isn't it the budget meeting, the budget passage?
Okay.
Am I correct in that? I think so. First,
But you're going to the whole board, full board with
yes, full board straight to the,
Okay.
to the agenda.
All right.
Well, thank you for the discussion, everyone.
Thank you.
Do you have any, anyone have any,
Motion to adjourn?
No, we're not.
I'm sorry.
Occupational health service provider?
gotta take care of our OTs and PTs and ATs and.
This will be easy.
Go ahead.
All right, I'll make this quick since we're ready to
We
adjourn.
got,
That's
we
okay.
got 25 minutes, so take as long as you
No,
want.
I won't take that long.
Okay.
We did a request for a proposal for occupational health providers, basically to provide services for our pre-employment exams, both including physicals as well as drug collection, drug screen collection, as well as occupational health should someone get injured during the workday. Currently, our provider is Ingalls as our primary provider and Physicians Immediate Care as our secondary provider. Through the RFP process, Ingalls, Physicians Immediate Care, and Advocate presented proposals to us. Advocates' locations were further away, which we see as a detriment in terms of considering them, as time away from the work site is an important factor in making a decision on which provider we choose. The proposals from Ingalls and Physicians Immediate Care were consistent with the rates that we are paying now, and we'd like to continue to use both facilities in our occupational health program.
Is there any questions from the board? From the audience? Oh, sorry.
Oh, no questions.
Oh. Any questions from the audience? With that, looking for a motion. I have it up if everyone's shut down ready.
Mr. Chairman.
Or slept. Trustee Mahoney.
I move to recommend to the village board approval to enter into an agreement for occupational health services with Ingalls Occupational Health Program beginning January 1st, 2020 for 5 years. And I move to recommend to the village board approval to enter into an agreement for occupational health services with Physicians Immediate Care beginning January 1st, 2020 for 5 years.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now I think it's time for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
Second.
Oh, all in favor?
Aye.
Just for members of the audience, that was just the committees. We have three structure, at this time, we have three committees that's going at 6 o'clock. Now we are just going to wait for the 7 o'clock board meeting. So